Well, thank you everybody for coming tonight and bearing the cold weather with me. And I'm just going to tell my story for everybody. Most of you know me, but if you don't, my name's Derick and local Greenfield guy. Lived here all my life. I grew up going to church in Greenfield with my grandma and grandpa every Sunday as a little boy. When my grandma died, I quit going to church. I graduated from Greenfield High School in '96 and moved to Joplin to start my career as a machinist. I worked at a couple of machine shops before deciding that I was looking for something more. 4 years later, I decided to join the Army in September of 2000 as an infantry guy. After basic and airborne school, I ended up stationed in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the Screaming Eagles. In February 2003, we got deployed to Kuwait to stage for the Iraq War. 7 months later, while on patrol in Mosul, our unit was ambushed late at night. 3 hostiles threw grenades and shot at us. A couple of those grenades landed between my feet while driving my Humvee. I was blown out of the truck and landed face down on the sidewalk, thinking I was about to die in this awful place. I thought this was it. I wasn't ready to die just yet. So I prayed for God to save me. I remember I kept trying to turn over and see what was going on, but for some reason, I just couldn't turn over. I was pretty scared at that moment. Shortly after that, I heard my guys say, "He's over here." I knew I would be okay at that point. They quickly patched me up for transport and loaded me in the other Humvee. That's when I saw my injuries for the first time. My right leg was pretty much gone below the knee, and the left leg and my left arm were pretty mangled. But at least they were still attached. At that point, a helicopter pilot who was flying by and heard our radio traffic back to headquarters told us that if we clear this intersection, she will land this bird and take me to the hospital right now. I'm not sure I would have made it the 2 to 3 hour drive. Next thing I remember, I was in the hospital under these bright lights talking to my captain. He was reassuring me that I was going to be okay. I woke up later in Launcesville, Germany, stayed there for a couple of weeks, getting prepped to go back to the United States. Now at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C., where I spent 13 months of rehab and over 20 plus surgeries while I was there. In October 2004, I was medically retired from the Army and eager to get home and start my new life as an amputee. I just bought a house outside of Greenfield and thought everything was going in the right direction. I quickly fell into a dark depression when I realized how different and difficult things were for me, as I spent a lot of time in my wheelchair. I spent about a year, maybe a little longer, just eating pain pills and trying to cope with my new life. My sister had invited me many times to join her at church, so I finally went with her, and all I heard from the preacher was that I was a terrible person and I was going to hell. What I didn't realize at this point in my life was that this was conviction, not persecution. In 2005, I started going to disabled sporting events like snow skiing out in Breckenridge, Colorado. This really got me out of my depression, and I saw a glimmer of hope for myself. I also went to Montana and learned to fly fish, and absolutely just loved that. So much so that I went back every year for 10 years to work for that company. In March 2009, 5.5 years later, after my injury date, I had had enough of my left foot hurting me, so I went back to Walter Reed to amputate the left foot. After doing this, I wondered why I waited so long to make this decision. It only took 3 months of rehab for the second leg to be good to go, so I went back home. In 2009, in July 2009 is where my life got interesting. I met my wife, Stephanie. Somehow, right away, I knew this girl was for me. We dated a year or so, got engaged, and we were married in May 2011. After being married a while, we talk about our future as a family and having children and such. She was pretty adamant about us finding a church home and raising our children up the right way, God's way. However, I was not feeling the same way about God. I was still aggravated at him for letting my legs get blown off. Months pass, and I started going with her to church, and I actually started listening to the Word. By this time, I felt differently about what I was hearing. I felt like I had a lot more to live for now, with a beautiful wife and a new baby in the oven. I wanted to be the best husband and dad I could be. Stephanie and I were baptized together here at Main Street Baptist Church in 2012. Many months pass, and it's Christmas time, and Stephanie's just a couple of weeks away from her due date. We just got home from a long day of festivities and such. She hollers at me to come look at her. She said, "I think my water just broke." I told her she needed to come and sit down and take a load off. Well, that didn't go over too well, as she yelled at me this time and said, "Get over here. We need to go to the hospital right now." The next afternoon, our first child was born. A beautiful girl, and when I saw her for the first time, I wept like never before. I was looking over her on the table as the nurses were getting her all cleaned up. I said, "Hi, baby girl." Little Isabella turned and looked up at me, and she put her arms out to me. This was such a huge turning point in my life. I knew that God was real. Only God could bring such a little miracle to me and turn my heart to mush. About 2.5 years go by, and Wyatt was born. A bouncing little boy. I was so proud. God was truly blessing us this year. A baby boy in a wheelchair-accessible home to come. Also, this was the year the Lady Blackhawk pilot contacted me through Facebook. She told me all about the night she picked me up in Iraq from her point of view. At first, I thought this might be a joke, but from all of her details, it was very real, and no one could have made this stuff up. Her biggest point of her story to me was that she had thousands and thousands of hours of flight time and was always on time, not early. This one particular night, something made her take off 10 minutes earlier than normal. Then look what she flew over and rescued me. Now, it took me 12 years to see this big picture that God was painting all along. God told Victoria Kane she needed to fly early on September 13th, 2003 to save me. I still have yet to meet this lady. I was mad at God for many years for letting my legs get taken away. But if there is one thing God allows people to do, He gives us freedom to make choices and have free will to make good choices and also to make bad choices. Like those guys did that night, they threw those grenades at me and my guys. God doesn't force us to seek Him. I choose to follow him to the best of my ability. I've come to terms with losing my legs and realize it was a blessing in disguise. I've had many opportunities to share my story to many folks over the years, and just maybe if it helps one poor person look towards God, it's all been worth it. Thank you.